Welcome to Public Space, a community dedicated to supporting individuals who have experienced religious trauma or find themselves in between and are looking for self-God as well as community. We exist beyond the four walls of colonized religion. Here, we create a safe and vibrant space where members can explore and share spirituality, stories, art, and intellectual inquiry through critical dialogue. Join us as we embark on a journey of healing, self-discovery, and creative expression. Together, we will foster a supportive community that empowers individuals to reclaim their voice, embrace their unique journeys, embody a Path-Maker Archetype, and find solace and strength in the company of like-minded individuals.
Greetings, Pathmakers, and welcome to Season 2. The trail is different, and what we're packing and what we're sharing this season is different as well. This season, we plan to have more engaging dialogues with individuals while off path. So enjoy the following dialogue, as it may inform you and add to your toolkit while you trek life beyond religion, especially colonized religion. See you out there. All right, welcome back. We are here off path with Cher, and she has an amazing book coming out mid-February, and she has an amazing perspective that we would love to hear and have you hear, especially in this community, in this space. So without further ado, Cher, please tell us a little bit about yourself and this amazing book that's coming out.
Yeah, sure. This is always like the hardest question. Tell us about yourself, right? Because I'm like, well, where do you want me to begin? And which self? But yeah, so gosh, the work I currently do, I'm going to just start there instead of trying to start from like birth and move my way up. So, um, I'm a doctoral student and in transformative social change, which is just a really fascinating and very progressive field. And most of my work is in the neurodiversity space and the disability justice space. And it's very forward-leaning lived experience. So I integrate lived experience into my scholarly work as equals, right? So as being just as important as the theoretical work, as the research, as all of these things. And I didn't really come to academia like on purpose. I'm a late in life bloomer on kind of all levels. So when I came back to school later in life, I thought I was going to go into clinical psychology. And I didn't know really why I thought I wanted to go into clinical psychology until I started to do the work and realized I was actually trying to figure out what happened to me. And at the time, what's wrong with me, right? That's kind of the questions I was asking myself. And because of the background that I come from, I had not been exposed to these types of mental health conversations, right? To psychology or psychiatry or these types of dynamics. And so I kind of got like thrown into it, and I was like, huh, wait a second. This doesn't feel right for me. Like this is not describing my mind. This is not describing my experience. I did have an experience. I had a really challenging experience, but this isn't describing it. And so that's how I kind of pivoted into the work that I do now. Is I started to see that there was a lot of structural issues. It wasn't that we were seeing bad actors necessarily, right? I mean, we have a history for sure, but when it comes to psychology, but um, people were doing the work because it was meaningful to them, but there was still some issues. And so that's how I kind of landed in this field. And yeah, I guess I'm going to just stop there because otherwise I'll just keep going and going. So
No, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, this amazing book and way of thinking has developed from life experiences that were
Mhm.
completely out of your control. And that's interesting, right? Because when individuals say, we know what's wrong with you. You know, it seems like the way you're framing this pushes back against that. Says, how can you know what I'm dealing with when you theoretically don't even know yourself? How are
Hmm.
you passing these claims of understanding? You know, it's just weird.
Well, and that's, I think, kind of a fundamental flaw of psychology, and again, structural. Never pointing fingers on individuals when I speak of these things, but is that we have this misconception that we can interpret other people's inner worlds. And a lot of times, right? Like, and we learn these things in all different spaces. We learn it in sociology, we learn it in psychology, we learn it in different, religious studies, and all of these things that biases are a normal part of all human cognition. But then if you think about that, then you're going, wait a second, how is a psychologist, how is a psychiatrist able to pinpoint my internal reality into a constellation of behaviors, this which then turns into a diagnosis? Maybe we'll get into that, but we don't need to get into this history of diagnosis and why they exist. But um, and so those were the questions I was just questioning. I was learning, but I was questioning so much what I was learning that it just, like, things weren't adding up. Yeah.
Yeah, we can empathize. Spiritual awakenings happen that way as well, right?
Mm,
Especially for myself, religious trauma clashing with my life experience, causing me to question. And
mm,
when you don't receive those answers, you go seeking answers elsewhere, where people normally don't look. And then along the way, you kind of develop in a unique way, right? Like it's like
mhm.
the path you're taking is helping to develop you,
Yeah.
so not everybody is the same, like there's no way, so yeah, that's interesting. Now, this book you're coming out with mid-February, can you explain how you came about even framing this? Because
Yeah.
we had the privilege of editing and helping you come out with this book, the latest version, because you have a ebook already
Yeah.
available. But this the mindset you have to kind of have to read and navigate this book is pretty unique. So
Yeah.
could you elaborate, please?
Yeah. Yeah. So first I want to say, there was a period of time before I started writing this book in my life that was a constellation of confusion, of, if we want to use pop culture term, trauma, um, misfit. I mean, all the things that you could possibly think of, I was experiencing, and I didn't really understand why I was experiencing them. All the things that happen for people who are kind of lost in their sense of identity, addiction, trauma, abuse. All of these things just kind of started piling onto me. And, something happened. I don't know, like, we could call it a spiritual awakening, we could call it all kinds of things. I can't, like, I look back in the kinda temporal space of that time and I go, "Maybe it was that. Maybe it was that." But something clicked. Something clicked in me, and, some people call it post-traumatic growth, some people call it positive disintegration. But something clicked in me, and my mind shifted quite a bit into a different kind of trajectory of looking at the world. And I talk, sometimes I'll cross, like, clinical language with kind of more metaphorical language, and so that can kind of sound confusing, but it's just because I've entered all of those spaces, and so sometimes the correct terminology makes sense in a clinical world because I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, there is some things, and so I preface that because I think about the term asynchronous development, and I'm autistic. I'm gifted. I'm ADHD. I consider myself a system. I have a constellation of an identity that is unique to me. And that asynchronous part of the autistic experience, of the neurodivergent experience, is really, I mean, I would say it's probably universal, that we have these kind of, oh, we can call them spiritual, we can call them mind awakenings, whatever we want to call them, but something shifts in us, and we get a capacity or an ability or a new set of tools that we didn't have in a previous developmental part of our life. And so the developmental path for a neurodivergent human is quite unique, right? In that it's like we don't follow Erickson's little, step by step linear trajectory. We loop and we wind. And I talk a lot about that in my book about, kind of reframing that type of language that we aren't regressing, right? This isn't regression. It's a remembering. It's like looking at something through a new lens and seeing it a little bit differently because we have more experience in life. We have more knowledge now. We have a different perspective, a different lens to look through. And so like I'll say, I have an autism diagnosis. I don't really identify with diagnosis or disorder and disability or things of these kinds of like structural administrative terms because they just don't align with my how I feel myself in the world. Um, but I am an autistic person, and so I can see that. I can see now when I'm looking through that correct lens, that correct understanding of how my mind operates. I can see those parts of my life differently, right? Not maybe not better or worse, just differently, which is in and of itself is like a healing maneuver, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. We love that. We love how you frame that. It reminds me too of theopoetics, and how it gives that leeway, that freedom to just see it from a unique perspective, not from doctrine, not from uh, religious absolutisms, but to say we want to reimagine and to
Hmm.
playing off of what you said, remembering is very powerful. Remembering. Um, so yeah, that's a good way to kind of prep somebody to read this book because the way you frame this, if you went to public school and then you read this, you'd be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
This has never come up in like my standard basic, citizen training or human growth.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that because I didn't really answer your question because I tend to do that. But um, so yeah, why did I write it this way? Why did it come out of me this way? Where did I get this language? Where did I get these ideas? I'm kind of an autodidact. I love to learn, right? And so kind of after this healing process began, before I went back to school, before all these things, I just started to read a lot. And I was like, my mind was just opening in so many different directions. I had no idea that some of these theories and ideas and spiritual uh, uh, modalities and philosophies like existed in the world. And I didn't come from a religious background. My parents are kind of funny people. My mom she's kind of 70s hippy dippy and my dad is very, very conservative. So I grew up in a house that already was balancing, paradox, right? Constantly. That's what we were doing in our home. A very loving, very kind, very compassionate home, but still difference, lot of difference. And in me, I have an older and younger sister. I'm the middle child, which you guys can all go down that path if you want, because it'll make a lot of sense. But my younger sister, we're all about 3 years apart. We were very different from each other. Our personalities, our temperaments, our needs, all of these things were different. I look at my mom now. My mom passed away in March, this last March, but I look back now in this kind of my own spiral, which I talk a lot about in the book. I look back at that and go, gosh, she was a superwoman. Like, see, I mean, there were moments where me and my mom, yeah, that's what moms and daughters do. But I can look back now and just go, wow, she was holding three very different, very unique, very needy young girls without language, or we didn't have any of the language of autism, right? All three of us are autistic, so very differently autistic. And she didn't have any of that language. She didn't have the tools. She didn't have resources. She didn't have support structures to do this, to raise three very different girls. And it was just for me to look back at that now, through my whole healing path, because I did go through the whole, wait a second, maybe it was my parents that did this to me, and of course it was, but but not in that way, not in that there's any ill intention. Being a parent myself, I can have two neurodivergent adult children. I can recognize that too, going, wow, like we are doing the best we can with the tools that we are provided in life. And I think I just went off topic again. So,
No, 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 not at all. It's completely relevant. You're right, because
Fire
it's a
away.
spiral,
Yeah.
right? We're spiraling. This is amazing. And to continue spiraling, um, you want to talk about a little bit about the symbols and the
Mhm.
images you have in your book.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I like to say, for those who, and I hope you guys read my book, because yes, you are going to be confused, but that is part of the journey. It's kind of a you can open my book really. I mean, Aaron, you'll say it, right? You can open my book in the middle and kind of read a chapter and be like, huh, it's going to make you think about you. That is the goal. My book is not a psychology book. I'm not telling you who you are. I'm not we're not patterning a diagnosis in this book in any way whatsoever. I don't know, maybe it was like a gift that was given to me. Sometimes I think a curse, but I have an ability to map very intricate details of my own interiority. And yeah, that can be fun sometimes and it can be a challenge sometimes. But we also learn about grounding that in the book. Um, but uh, but because of that, uh, and I was able to kind of go through that process and not attach myself to something else. I think that that's really the key thing. That's how these metaphors kind of emerged for me. They emerged from my real lived experience at the time of doing the work and writing the book. I was gardening. I was learning how to do. I use the garden metaphor in my book so much. But I was actually doing that work. I had my hands in the dirt. I was sowing seeds. I was actually doing the labor of gardening and contemplating and reflecting and introspecting on my own life and how those uh, those processes of a real living ecosystem mirrored my own. And it was like I couldn't unsee it, and I was like, goodness. And then, so here's the part that I wanted to talk about before that I forgot. Like, um, the way that I came to understand these things, it was like lived experience first, often, sometimes theory first, but often lived experience first, theory second. So I'm doing this work and I'm feeling these metaphors. I'm journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling, and you'll see that in the book too. um, uh, it opens spaces to different places that you wouldn't think to go. And so in that process, that's where the term cognitive ecology came from, right? I was like, wait a second, okay, ecosystem of mind ecosystem. And then I'm like, well, autism, cognition, like I'm learning about my cognition as I'm writing about my cognition. And that's how it came to be. So it turns out cognitive ecology is an actual, like, real theoretical framework. And it's beautiful. A lot of how the book uh, aligns with this kind of multi-dimensional ecological view of human systems, right? And so, but it was very spiritual in a way. It just kind of happened at the same time. And I was like, wait a second, this, and this is this. Like this theory aligns. It makes sense. And so, and it was the first one really that did make a lot of sense for me. And I love theory, I love developmental theory. Like, I love it. Like it's fascinating to me. When I read Ken Wilber, and I read like everything, all of it. Like it was like getting redundant, but I was like, there was something about his work, which is when I think about Ken Wilber's work, I think about he was mapping his own mind, right? That's his version of looking at the world through this multidimensional lens, and it's beautiful. And when I was reading it, I was just going, "Oh yeah, yeah, that makes, ooh, yeah, oh, I see that." And so that's kind of how I don't come at theory as like a traditional philosopher who's wanting to like debate and like, no, it's this way, or no, it's this way. Or a lot of people in the integral world I found like to diagnose each other. What level are you at? What stage are you at? What state are you in? All of these different things. And I was like, I don't really want to do that to people. Like, I don't. Like, that's just not my thing. And so, but I did find so much value in that. Oh, and like Ken Wilber says, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't throw Ken out with the bathwater either. Like there's so much there that is just, it's in me. It's integrated into how I do this work, how I'm in relationship with other people. And so, yeah, I again, another tangent. Where are we in the spiral?
I think we're at the point of which you're telling us how you continuously evolve from this work. And could you explain how it's continuously helping you evolve?
Yeah. It's fun because no, I don't know if many people say that about human development, that it's fun. But I make it fun. And that's like another really cool part of the book is like you get to see how I did it, but you don't have to do it my way at all. You could be like, heh, yeah, no. Like that's weird, Cher. Like, no, we're not doing that. But it might spark something else. You might see her garden metaphor is really cool, but I think of it more of like a operating system. And I have people in my community who we'll talk about that. Don't let me forget about that. The community, how that is such a big part of my work. But how people say, yeah, I can see that, but it's like this for me. And that is my favorite answer when someone says that. When I write something and they say, yeah, I can see that. And it's more like this for me because that means it sparked something. It means they saw enough of themselves there that they were able to pull the thread further and find something that really aligned. And that's the goal of this work. That's the goal of mapping your mind. That's the goal of human development, right? Is like continuous growth. I'm a growth oriented person. In all aspects of my life. I like to grow. I like to, if we want to get into the metaphors, the garden metaphors, the we talk a lot about root systems in the book, and that how I think of root systems is like that's what holds you, right? In a lot of developmental theory, um, we sometimes, depending on who you're reading, focus so much on transcendence, right? We focus so much on coming to the outside and looking, out here and looking in, which is beautiful. I say, sometimes I say, well, transcendence is a Tuesday for me, but I need to come home, right? Like I need to come home. I have an autistic gifted brain. I have hyperphantasia. Like meditation is a beautiful experience for me. It's very natural. I love to go there. And that's escapism at some point, right? Like it truly, truly is. And so that's why I talk about those root systems. Like what holds us to our community? What holds us within our family systems? What holds us within even our work systems or wherever we're in relationship with other people? And that's our root systems, right? That's our history. That's our ancestry. That's our, if we want to get into science, we can talk about epigenetics. And so we also explore that, and in the book. So yeah.
Yeah, let's continue spiraling into this concept of community. What kind of community are you in right now? And
Yeah.
how's that growing?
Yeah. Okay. So again, one of these things that I get these insights sometimes. I'm just like, I gotta do this. Like, I have to do this. It's gonna happen. I'm not gonna not let it happen. So when I got my autism diagnosis, I go, oh shoot, this is gonna be weird. Like it just was like, this is a big change in life, right? Like I'd already done enough research on autism to go, okay, this is a different cognitive architecture. I've been operating in the wrong cognitive, like I thought I was, like, and okay, so that makes sense, right? And then the grief, that's where the big moment hit. I was like, oh yeah, I need people. I need support. I need help. And then I started to notice, oh wait, I'm not the only one going through this. Like there's a lot of people. And that's where community began. I also am in addiction recovery, and so I learned a lot about community development, a lot about community building through the lived experience community building work I did for that. And so I said, okay, then let's do this. And I grabbed a few randos, uh, just literally some of the people who are the beginning of this community were people I had just interacted with on the internet enough to have enough trust to say, hey, do you want to do some Zoom meetings together and talk about this stuff? And that's how the community began. It was so easy. People think, in community building is difficult, right? That it's relationships. I mean, you are building relationships between people, and that is hard, difficult work. But it is really simple. It's like in AA, they said it only takes two to make a meeting. Exactly. We are in community right now, right? We are having a conversation. We are in relationship. We are holding space for one another. And so that's how it began, was like, how can I hold space for another human or two or three or four or 10, and can they hold space for me at the same time? And so that's how the Compassion Collective began, and was just us showing up for one another. And that's what it still is. Honestly, it's just us showing up for one another. But in that showing up for one another, I didn't have to do this work alone. When I ran into those spirals where I was like, I probably shouldn't go deeper here. Like, this is not a spiral you do alone, right? Like, this is a spiral that you ask questions where you say, did I run into a roadblock here? Like, what's going on, friends? And you got to get that feedback. You got to, and one thing about psychology that I love and still am challenged with, I really find the therapeutic relationship valuable on so many levels. I've had a therapist for 6 years, so I'm doing this work with lot of support. I'm not doing it alone. Um, and there's something in that power dynamic, no matter which way, even if your therapist is very aware of the power that they hold, that is not the same as a peer relationship, peer therapeutic relationship even. The power dynamic has been equalized in a peer relationship. There's no exchange of monetary, everything is reciprocal in the energetic way, right? And so it's just a different type of dynamic, and it's one I value so very much, uh, that I get that. That's like beyond that. I'm like, wow, like people show up for me on a Zoom meeting a couple times every week, and I just have to open it, and then they're just there. Like that's what we created, and so I am going to do a community, a book on community building, and it will be probably very practical and not so spirally, um, but um, but I especially with what's going on in the world right now, if you don't have community, and I know it's scary, like it's scary to like open yourself up to people, to new people, to different people. But there's tools to do that too, to create psychologically safe environments, to do that work. But uh, just just grab a person and say, join a Zoom meeting with me. Just try it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You made me think of my dissertation work. Um, the challenge was to create a multi-faith online community. And like you did, we grabbed whoever was next to us and said, let's try this, and everyone's journey looks different, but it is a beautiful way and it is theoretically simple, right? From a meta spiritual perspective, like in Christianity in the Bible, right? It's a very easy passage that says, where there's two or more are gathered, God is there. That church or community idea is being reflected, through that passage. And you're right, it takes at least two, and you're right, because we could see this even in biology, right?
Yeah.
Cells, and the couples and the relationships. It's everywhere. We see
Yes.
it in the animal kingdom.
Mhm.
We see it. So I love the book how it frames this ecology. And now my question to you, if you could shed some light on, is this concept of human structures or human systems. Excuse me, that's the term you used. Could you explain or elaborate a little bit more on the human
Yeah.
systems and what they are? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so when I think about a human and I think about um, our experiences in the world, and this is through my own lived experience lens, right? So um, I think about how instead of like pinpointing a diagnosis, right, we're pinpointing a temporal a moment in time that could have, right, potentially had a massive imprint on our experience of the world, how we show up, who we trust, who we don't trust, all of these different things. That's part of our system. It's part of how we organize meaning. It's part of how we um, make decisions. How what regulates our nervous system. What um, uh, constrains our nervous system. And again, don't I'm careful about this one because in the clinical world, system-oriented dynamics are framed much differently than the way that I frame a system. And so I just want to be clear about that now that we are steering clear of the clinical world when it comes to system dynamics, like the human mind system dynamic. And I did that intentionally. Uh, was decolonizing my mental health, um, and depathologizing my mental health. The more work I did in structural systemic dynamics, institutional dynamics, and recognized the um, the depth of harm that even though those systems want to help, have done in our cultures, our communities, and for individuals, made me go, I don't want to go down that path. That looks like it's going to be a slippery slope. And so I really love parts work. I did a lot of integrating the different uh, I guess, kind of thought leaders in that area. But again, I think of that as that was one person's conception of this, right? And it's interesting and it's workable and doesn't quite work for me, right? And so I want to, right? It doesn't quite work for me, so I'm going to make up my own. But that's the goal of the book is like maybe you are a cis, maybe you're not. It's not it's not a pathology to think of yourself as having multiple different parts. Sometimes it's good for us to look at specific um, interesting areas of our lives um, from a more meta cognitive perspective, right? So I am me looking at me going, what does that mean? Why did that happen that way? How did that occur? And the more I did that, I realized, gosh, there's a lot of me's. There's a lot in here. And they're wonderful. And I love them. And that's a big part of my systems work is that compassionate piece. I learned very early on in all of this work that I've done that I couldn't do it if I wasn't considerate to the human that is here, right? That is on this earth, that is interacting with its environment. Um, which kind of feels a little like right, just like I'm disconnecting, but from self. But I didn't. I didn't really get the choice, right? Like things in life happened and which disconnected me from self. So the work, the system work, some people call it integration work. Um, uh, I think it's lifelong work. I like it a lot. So I don't feel like I need to solve anything necessarily. I just need to be in relationship. And so yeah, that's kind of how I look at systems. I don't look at it as a pathology. I look at it as a tool, and a tool that we were adapted for.
That's interesting. Yeah. The way you describe it makes me think of depth psychology, Jungian psychology, and archetypes, archetypical psychology, and the many selves, and how he even describes, not saying that that's the way, but he gives a great, my personal opinion, gives a great definition of what's happening to the psyche, the human mind, constantly. And it's this fracturing, like you kind of mentioned, like, and it's a splitting, and we see this with cells, they're splitting. And so the splitting is not necessarily bad, but, along with the way you're framing this, it also allows us to see it like it's not good or bad. It's just, this is the path.
Yeah.
This is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Can we manage the splitting? Can we manage the fracturings of cells? And so, yeah, I hear you so loud and clear. But
And
yeah, you're
maybe
right. God, please, please, please.
oh no, and I mean I'm a big word person, so I hear the word manage, and I'm like, no, I'm not managing jack shit here. I don't know which part came out to tell you that, but one of them did. And but yeah, it's more of like when I think about so I was a restaurant manager for a very long time, big part of my life. That I was in the hospital. I loved the hospitality. Lots of people, right? Like I managed personalities, like all different kinds. Um, but we didn't think about it that way in my at least in the ones in the spaces that I was supporting. We were a team, right? Like each person has a role, each role has a purpose. Sometimes people in certain roles get overextended and need breaks, right? Like it's like that is how I think of and so I'm way off in left field with management too, right? Like I don't manage like most normal people manage because I trust. There's a lot of trust that I put into my team, and that's kind of like I don't really like the word team either, but I can't think of a better one right now. So but that's kind of how I think of my system. It's like there's not one that's better than the other. There is a manager in my system that kind of makes sure things happen when they're supposed to happen and keeps things organized. And but overall, we're not. We are we're a system, right? Like there's every it doesn't work. It doesn't work and move in the world if we're ignoring a part of our system um, it in favor um, of whatever it might be, right? And we do that constantly. That's normal. That's a normal part of human life that we're prioritizing and making those choices on what's good for us. But um, I really got super deep into the system work, and I'm still. Sometimes I'm deep, and sometimes I'm a little more out here about it. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the architecture, that's the best way I can put it, the architecture of the mind by having my own internal community, right? And, I was able to practice those things too, because I was trusting those different parts of me to be able to hold that dynamic, right? Whether it was like presence, like what does presence really mean? And then I like really felt into that embodied mechanism. And I think that that's a big part that we are missing in the world right now is I think we're all systems personally. It's just my opinion, but I think some of us are just more aware that we are operating in that way. And those who are unaware, and right, we got a big part of our world right now that is very unaware of how they show up and how they operate in the world. Uh, those are folks that are um, they don't, it's not a community inside of them, right? There is conflict. There is um, decisions being made unconsciously, about how we are showing up with one another. And it makes me sad talking about that part. So, because I'm on social media a lot, and I watch some of these dynamics, and I'm, gosh, oh, like, why are we doing this to one another? It's like, oh, yeah, we'll stop there. It makes me sad.
Yeah, no, we hear you. Um, as above, so below, as within, so without. You know, I love what you said though about people that don't have community inside. It's demonstrating outside as violence and hatred and separation. That's a brilliant connection because we don't talk about that enough, right? Like a lot of the individuals that we are saying is the problem with the world, they just have internal, war, no unity, no community, like you're saying. I love how you use that. That's brilliant. Um, and honestly, I never even thought about it like that. But once you said it, it just makes sense. You're right. Like we got to find this peace, in ourself so that we can identify it
Gosh.
outwardly.
That is why I started this work. You just nailed it, right? I needed to find peace in myself. I needed to understand, why was my inside warring the way that it was? Why did I not understand all of the what was going on? And this was not. It's interesting sometimes, because this was not like something I was like, hey, I'm going to become a doctor, right? Like, that's not what happened. I am going to be a doctor soon, and I'm definitely taking that title, but when it happens, because this is hard work. It's some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. Scholarly writing. Oh my God, that's not how I write. Oh, but anyways, I digress. But yeah, when I started doing this work, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to become this weirdo person who writes about spiral logic. No, it just happened. It just happened. And I want to share it because of what it brought me. It was like, wow, you go inside yourself, and it's scary in there sometimes. There you will find things that are like, oh, wow, okay. And, all these things, like, it happened. There's paths everywhere. There's paths to enter. I am one path to enter this work, right? I might not be your path. I might be a little bit too wild. I call myself a wild mind. All the things, right? Autism, ADHD, just keep you adding them. They're all there. And but yeah, I believe it's wild and wonderful to learn about how your internal world works, and there's no right or wrong way to understand it. And this is a different path, right? Psychology is great there, and I love Jungian psychology. I will tell anybody to go down that path. Depth psychology is probably a good holding. If you got a little depth psychology background, you'll get some of what I'm doing there. um uh but uh but yeah, I just don't think there's any one wrong way. And that might be the biggest difference about my work, is I was never coming at this from a top-down perspective. I didn't become this and then write about this because I diagnosed all of this. Like, it's so, and not saying that is wrong. That is not wrong. That is helpful for people in a lot of uh, instances and situations and environments. It just wasn't for me. And I needed to figure it out a different way. So I just took one of my favorite poems since I was a little girl was Robert Frost's Two Roads Diverged on Yellow Wood. Sorry, I could not travel both. Yeah. Yeah. That is like, that's that's what I did. I go, wait, no, we're going to go this way. And there's another author that I love, her, Adrienne Murray Brown. If anybody hasn't read her work, oh God, yeah, she's just Emergent Strategy. I read that book and I was just like, oh, oh, this is what I'm doing. It like validated me in so many ways. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, number one, she's amazing, amazing, amazing. I mean, sometimes I'm like, I put her in the category of like bell hooks. I'm like, she is like our bell hooks of this time, right? Mm. And so I read her and just like feel exactly what I need to feel. She is not soft. She is honest. And so she will bring up things that you can then sit with. And I think that that is what my work does too. I think I I bring you into your space, your mind, your body in a way that is enough holding, but I'm still gonna I'm still gonna activate you in the right ways as well. But I also am gonna say, hey, but why don't you go take a break now? Because this is a lot.
Yeah, we definitely get you. We definitely get you. And we do want to be respectful of time. And thank you again for making time and creating this space to share with us, to, share your book and your insights that are beautiful. We're going to have the links in the description to share her Substack. If you can, give a subscribe, a like, read through, listen through. She's incredible, to further this concept of development as well and try to better understand the world she's coming out of and creating constantly. On that note, do you have any final thoughts, closing thoughts that you would like to share?
Just thank you. Oh my gosh. Just been working with you I mean, we started this project in June, I think. So it's like it's been wonderful. Like it makes a huge difference when you work with somebody who's like in your wavelength. And so I'm yeah, just so much gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. The process itself has changed me, as a creator, as an editor. Um, you know, to be honest, your framework initially was challenging in a good way because it pushed me to then think outside the routine that I'm normally used to. And so no one would ever know this, but
Oh, yeah.
the editing process was, a 50-50. It was just like, okay, we got to figure out a methodology here of taking what this is and how it looks and make it so that the computer can understand it and we
Yeah.
can upload and stuff. It's not an easy task because, your flow and how things had to be in a certain order, because if you broke it up, it would just not give that impact. It wouldn't be you. And
Yeah.
so I think we went through honestly, 15 iterations
Oh my gosh.
before we
Wow.
even was like,
You
hey,
nailed
share, we got you a final edit. Check
Yeah.
this out.
You nailed it because that
Oh,
was
thank
so
you.
important. I told you that from the beginning, that the flow was almost more important than the word. Like you have to read me because you can see how I talk. And that was just really important to me that people got to read the way that my cadence, right? Like I wanted it to be read in that way because it's part of it. It's part of the work. Part of the work is the cadence.
Right. Exactly. And we had to understand that. It was a new level of understanding because typically people write books and it has that very simple cadence. It's nothing good or bad about it. It's just this is like academia has its own cadence,
Oh my
and that's what
gosh.
makes it a little challenging, right?
Thank
Versus
you for
like a college paper essay, has its different cadence. So this book definitely had a very specific cadence and unique cadence, mind you. You're right. It was like, in order for the cadence to be continuous, the reader has to be able to breathe through it, like instead of just hiccups. Some books have hiccups. It's like, what, this
Yeah.
chapter, how did you transition? Where are we going with this? But
Yeah.
yeah, I could say definitely like this cadence was wow,
Ah,
and
thank
and
you.
you're
Yeah,
right. You can jump in anywhere
yeah.
because it
That was a
usually
big
pushes you back to the other parts anyway.
Yeah, it
So
will. Oh, yeah, it'll
yeah,
spiral you right back where you need to land. That
right.
was, like, very much who a big influence for Dr. Seuss, like, his cadence.
Ah, yes.
Like, when you
Yes.
read Dr. Seuss, you read him to know to I mean, it lands in your body
Yes.
in a way, and so that's what I want. I wanted it to land in the body in the right
Mm. Yeah, you're right. It's poetry, not was. It is poetry. And we recognize that as a poet, you know, and was like, yeah, you can't move this around. This is symbolic, This has to
Yeah.
be here. But yeah, with all that said, it's been an honor. It's been a blast. Thank you so much for the
Yeah.
time. Hopefully you can come back maybe after your book has published and you're starting to think about that community book. We can have you back. It would be awesome to talk about community.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be fun.
yeah,
I'll come back
because
anytime to have a
oh,
conversation.
thank you. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, on that note, we'll close out.
Okay.
And just like to say, it's really important the work that Cher is doing. So please take time, read her work, listen to her voice of advocacy, if you can, because right now a lot of artists and creators are under attack digitally, and we're being kind of pushed off platforms. So, before we have to disappear off the mainstreams, please get a glimpse of, these gems that we are trying to protect. And we are partnering and networking as artists and creators with shared minds and likenesses for the people, So please, this is not about capitalism and making a bunch of money. This is about sharing information and expanding our minds and growing. Oh, so on that note, we'll see you next time for Public Space. Thank you.
Thinking about starting a podcast but don't know where to begin? Do you want to improve the quality of your podcast? Struggling with podcast editing and post-production? Want to enhance your podcast's storytelling? Ready to take your podcast to the next level? Discover how Lost Raven Studios podcast consulting can walk with you. Visit our website and schedule a free consultation.